Imagine watching the Super Bowl, the biggest game of the year. Right as the referee is about to blow his whistle on a critical play, a group of officers storms the field and handcuffs him. The crowd is in shock, the players are confused, and the rules of the game are suddenly up for grabs. This isn't just a sports nightmare. It's a chillingly accurate metaphor for what is happening to the world's most powerful financial institution right now. When the referee of the economy is silenced, the rules of money change for everyone, and the stakes couldn't be higher for your personal bank account. But behind all the headlines, there is one single, massive figure that should stop you in your tracks: $2.5 billion. That is the cost of a headquarters renovation being used as the trigger for a criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell. But this isn't about construction costs. It's a direct challenge to the Fed's power. This specific crisis is quietly eating away at the future value of your savings, because if politicians start deciding interest rates to win votes, it leads to a hidden tax that destroys 4% of your purchasing power almost overnight. I'll reveal a secret exit used by the world's biggest banks to escape this chaos later in this video. But first, we need to stop the immediate damage to your portfolio. We aren't going to wait for a total market collapse to protect you, because the ground beneath Wall Street is already starting to shift. When the central bank is under fire, price swings become the new normal, and the old buy and hold strategy is facing its toughest test in decades. You need to understand that when the referee is in handcuffs, the players start making erratic moves. In this environment, your biggest enemy isn't the market itself, but the lack of a clear plan, as uncertainty makes it impossible to see the road ahead for your investments. Your first line of defense is to increase your liquidity. You're ready to use cash right now by looking at your cash reserves and short-term treasuries. In a world of political chaos, cash isn't just trash, it's your oxygen, giving you the power to stay calm while others are forced to sell at a loss. Having a solid cash cushion is like wearing a fireproof vest before the sparks fly, allowing you to wait for the smoke to clear so you can identify real opportunities. This single move connects the macro chaos in Washington directly to the micro safety of your own wallet. Knowing how to stay safe today is vital. But it is useless without opening the engine's hood to see exactly what broke the machine of our economy. If we don't understand the hidden mechanism behind why the Fed needs to be independent, we risk falling into the same financial trap over and over again. It's time to look deeper into the engine room to see how a simple building renovation could lead to a massive inflation shock or a sudden, painful rise in prices for your family. We need to see why the rules of money are being rewritten as we speak. Think of the economy like your house during a scorching summer, and the Federal Reserve is the thermostat. Its only job is to keep the temperature steady, not too hot to cause a fire and not too cold to freeze the pipes, which experts call price stability. Think of it this way. It's like being at a party where someone wants to crank up the heat just to feel good right now, ignoring the fact that the furnace might explode later. When politicians grab the thermostat, they usually want it hot to win votes, even if it burns the house down. The simplest way to look at it is this. If the Fed isn't independent, the government can force it to print money to fund its own projects. This is essentially turning off the water tap to cool the engine, but instead, they're just flooding the basement with cheap cash that buys less every day. This is the ultimate test of common sense. If the Fed becomes a tool of the White House, the money in your pocket becomes less like a store of value and more like a melting ice cube. The Fed tries to take money out of the economy to cool things down, but politicians want to keep the tap wide open. History has a way of repeating itself, and we've seen this movie before back in the 1970s. President Richard Nixon famously pressured the Fed chair to keep interest rates low to help his re-election, despite prices rising across the country. The result was a decade of brutal inflation that destroyed the middle class and made every trip to the grocery store a nightmare. This validates our fear today. When the central bank loses its backbone, the public, people like you, always pays the price through higher costs. Look at how the drawing is evolving. Notice those cracks appearing in the concrete of our financial system? That's the credit spreads widening, which is just a fancy way of saying banks are getting too scared to lend money to anyone but the safest borrowers. At Sketching Finance, we simplify the complex so you can stay in control of your financial destiny while everyone else is lost in the noise. Knowing that history is repeating itself is essential, but it is useless without a specific plan for the two very different roads we might face tomorrow. Think of it like having a map of a city that's being rebuilt. You need to know which path leads to safety. We stand at a fork in the road, where the next move in Washington will dictate your wealth for the next decade. Now that you've opened the hood, you need to know exactly which turn to take to reach that secret exit I mentioned earlier. Let's look at the specific scenarios that will reveal how professional players are protecting their fortunes. So, we stand at a fork in the road. In the first path, the bull case, the Fed manages to fight off the political pressure and maintains its independence. If the investigation is seen as just a hollow political move, the market will breathe a massive sigh of relief, and stability will return. In this world, we focus on quality, dividend-paying companies because the risk of runaway inflation fades. Your long-term growth plan stays on track, creating the managed heat scenario that every smart investor dreams of. But if the second path happens and the Fed is captured by politics, the engine breaks completely. If the White House starts setting interest rates, we move into hard assets, things like gold or real estate that the government cannot simply print. This is the currency debasement path, where money becomes a political tool and loses its value. In this case, your strategy must pivot from growing wealth to simply preserving it by holding assets that no politician can touch. While the public is panicking over the news, what are the big institutional players quietly doing? These professional giants aren't waiting for the headlines. They are already widening their safety margins and hedging with alternative assets. They are accumulating the very assets I'm about to reveal because they know that in a world without a referee, the person who owns the most real wealth wins. While most people follow the noise, the professional players follow the cash flow. Remember the secret exit I mentioned? This strategy isn't a complex stock pick. It's a move into out-of-system assets like gold and Bitcoin. These are assets that don't rely on Jerome Powell or any politician to maintain their value. Think of these as your insurance policies against a failing thermostat. By holding a small percentage of your net worth in these, you ensure that even if the US dollar faces a crisis of confidence, your family's future remains bright. It's the ultimate practical win for your wallet. Let's recap our journey to survive the Fed crisis. First, audit your liquidity. Make sure you have enough cash to avoid being forced to sell. Second, watch the thermostat. If prices stay hot, move to hard assets. And third, use that secret exit by holding a small hedge in gold or Bitcoin. By following this checklist, you aren't just surviving the chaos, you're mastering it. You've moved from a confused spectator to a calculated player who knows exactly where the exit doors are located. Remember, investing is about being the most prepared person in the room, not the luckiest. At Sketching Finance, we believe that understanding the why is your greatest edge. Hit subscribe to keep your financial compass pointing true north. We simplify the complex so you can build wealth that lasts, regardless of who is in Washington. Stay smart, stay busy on the right things, and keep sketching your own financial future. But what if the Fed isn't the only one under siege? Knowing the Fed's struggle is vital, but it is useless without understanding a massive shift happening right now in how the US government pays its bills. It involves a secret agreement with the world's biggest banks that could change everything. If you thought the Powell investigation was scary, wait until you see who is actually holding the purse strings in our next video. See you there.